Clue is exactly what it says on the tin. You literally play Clue the board game with 3 to 6 players on the Super Nintendo on one television screen. To briefly explain Clue as I understand it, each player starts with some cards that are evidence and explore Mr. Body's mansion to try to figure out who killed him. I'm going to be honest, I don't want to spend a significant portion of this video explaining a 60-year-old board game you can look up the rules to. Effectively, you explore the mansion to gather evidence in addition to the evidence that you start with to try to figure out the person, weapon, and place that an assassination happened. I don't love this game, like the board game. I actually think the video game looks and sounds pretty good and functions well, besides one thing. But I don't like Clue as a board game, so that kind of clouds my judgment of this. Also, playing this version of the game involves straight-up note-taking. There might be a digital version of an evidence card for Clue that you can find on the internet somewhere that kind of automates things, that helps you process all the information a little bit easier. But beyond that maybe existing, there's a lot you have to keep in your head or take notes on to play this game. Another disadvantage is that if you're playing with friends on one screen, there are points where they will literally have to look away from the TV screen during your turn if you want to look at the cards you have. And you'll probably have to maintain all the information. You also definitely cannot guess wrong, or you'll just lose the game. And I mean make an accusation. You can theorize incorrectly, but you cannot make an accusation incorrectly or you lose the game. And that's a rule that I forgot about while I was playing and I got myself eliminated. It is cool that you can watch the AI play out the rest of the game, though. This game seems to be made really well, all things considered. I didn't find the music unbearable and the animations looked good. I think this game is well executed, but you can buy Clue at Target right now and avoid all the weird esoteric things you have to do to play this version of the game with your friends. I guess if you don't have any friends, the AI in this game can be a substitute for them. I really tried to give Spanky's Quest a chance to entertain me more than the obvious monkey spanking joke that would come from the way this game is named, but it really didn't. Spanky's Quest is kind of a puzzle platformer. The way you interact with the game is a bit more action-ish than puzzle platformer, but the things you can do are very limited like a puzzle platformer, so I'm gonna call it that. You control Spanky, a monkey, and you can jump and shoot a ball that you can bounce. The bouncy ball can be turned into an attack, and the strength of the attack is determined by how many times you have bounced the ball off of Spanky's head. You have to use these attacks to defeat enemies and gather enough keys to escape the level you are in. I find the threshold for getting hit by an enemy to be a bit too loose to be fun for my taste. I also just don't find this ball bouncing mechanic actually interesting enough for me to want to see what's in the game past the first world, which is the only thing I saw during my play session, because in combination with getting hit very easily, you only get 3 hits before a complete game over, and you have to start all over again. I think the farthest I made was like 7 levels, or 8, and you can't continue from anywhere but the first level again. And these levels aren't exactly short. They can be short if you're good at them, but This game is designed like an NES game, but it's on the Super Nintendo for some reason. I just found the early levels of this game not very fun, and having to play them repeatedly for 20 minutes after making whatever minor mistake I made really soured my mood. I think there might be something here for somebody, but it definitely isn't for me. If you want to play a quirky, obscure Super Nintendo platformer, I'd personally get a lot more enjoyment out of Smart Ball than this game, and I think you would too. So before I actually talk about race driving, please watch this. This is one of the worst games I have ever played on the Super Nintendo. I have never gotten motion sickness from playing any video game, including VR headset games. But I swear this game actually came close to giving me motion sickness somehow. I beat the default high score record on the first track and could have probably played the racing on that track forever had I not gotten way too bored of playing it. Trying out the first stunt track, it feels like they purposefully made these tracks impossible to navigate efficiently efficiently or correctly the first time, and you have to just guess how to do this. This game was made by THQ, and if I'm being honest, yeah, that makes sense. I have not experienced driving physics that feel like they don't exist like this before. After playing Top Gear and F-Zero, I'm legitimately amazed someone can execute a driving game as poorly as this is executed. This is the pit fighter of racing games. This is a video game that exists. I don't think how poorly this game controls can be communicated with words. I do not recommend you spend any time at all playing this game. However, if you're curious, this game takes no time to try out, and you can torture yourself like I did for a bit just to see what this is like. I promise you've probably never experienced anything like this before. Also, I don't want anyone to say Star Fox looks bad ever again after seeing this. So, this version of Street Fighter 2 is not Street Fighter 2 Turbo or Championship Edition or whatever the definitive version of Street Fighter 2 is for the Super Nintendo, so it almost feels like it isn't even worth it to talk about this game, except for the fact that this is literally the second 2D fighter for the Super Nintendo that released in the US. I believe it's the first 2D fighter with character selection. The only other 2D fighter for the Super Nintendo at this point is the Ultraman game I played in my November episode of this series, and that game is clunky hot garbage, has no multiplayer, and no character selection. Pit Fighter exists, but is horrendously bad, and is not a pure 2D fighter. It has inward and outward movement. Unless I'm majorly forgetting something, Street Fighter 2 set the standard for what a 2D fighter could be on the Super Nintendo, and being the second one and the first one that is actually playable. The characters in this version of the game have a limited set of special moves, and there aren't any super moves or anything. To be honest, I really am not a Street Fighter expert, and I know nothing about the differences between the versions of Street Fighter 2, so I can only evaluate what I saw here during my short play session. There's a lot of depth to this game. You have 8 characters, they all have their own special moves and movesets, in addition to the base 3 punches and kicks everyone gets. This game feels a little overwhelming, even though it's the base version of Street Fighter 2. There's a lot going on here with how to attack, how to block, and getting button combinations and timing right to pull off the special moves. There's a lot that would need to go to muscle memory here that I definitely don't have time to ingrain in an hour of play. I will say it feels kind of difficult to get used to the exact timing for the special moves. I'm 100% sure that's my lack of skill issue, but it was noticeable that the inputs and attacks didn't feel exactly consistent. I also, this is a tangent, but I couldn't do like the back charge moves. So in Street Fighter, there's specific characters who they have a mechanic where you hold back for 2 seconds and then forward and a button to do a move. And I was playing as E Honda, and he's one of those characters, and I couldn't do it, and I'm not sure why that didn't work for me. This game feels difficult on the default difficulties, so if you're gonna try out this game, I suggest maybe turning it down if you want to see everything the game has to offer in a broader sense, at least when you're starting out. I didn't do that because I prefer playing games on their default difficulty, and I got frustrated with losing the same fights over and over again because they expect you to be pretty competent right off the bat, and I am anything but competent. I actually think this game has a lot to offer, but I'm sure this revision is probably not the version you actually want to play for the Super Nintendo, unless you care about the history like I do. This game works well, and I think it deserves all the hype it gets. I'm horrible at fighting games, but I enjoyed my time with this one, even though I got wrecked by the AI constantly. And that is every game released for the Super Nintendo in June played. If I'm being honest, I'm suffering from mediocre game fatigue making this series at this point. But the next month has at least one great game in Soul Blazer, which I'll have to resist playing the whole way through. And I've heard the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4 game is good, but I've never seriously played it. So that's pretty exciting. I was also genuinely impressed with how good Street Fighter 2, just the base version of Street Fighter 2, felt out of the box. I wasn't sure how much I'd like it considering how much even just that game has changed across time, not accounting for further numbered titles and other 2D 2D fighters. If you like this video, please like it, and if you enjoyed listening to me talk about old and obscure games, please subscribe to the channel, as that's exactly what I do here. Next episode will be the season finale of this particular leg of the SNES in chronological order, where after I make that episode, I'm going to take some time to talk a bit more in depth about some of the games I played from this first year of Super Nintendo games, and some other stuff I feel like talking about to try to make some more varied content and see what else people may like to see from me. I hope I see you next time. Have a great day.